All right, press it. Tell me when I'm live. All right, what's up, everyone? Jeremy Majors here with Majors Academy Dog Training out of Green Bay, Wisconsin. And this is Thirsty Thursdays, episode 48, where we answer any and all dog training questions. So if you are new to this channel or new to this page, we are a dog training facility that specializes in fearful and or aggressive dogs. Behavior modification is where we sort of stay. So feel free to ask questions. Feel free to ask as many questions as you like. You can ask more than one question. We can have a freaking conversation if you want. It's all good in the hood. So feel free to ask. We are here. Okay. All right. First question comes from Rory and Miss Vivian. All right. Jeremy, there's a new home being built next to mine. Vivian is reacting to the constant coming and going of workers, power tools, and equipment. I brought her over to meet the workers today. Should I continue to do this? How can I stop the reactions? I do not kennel her during the day while most of the activity is occurring. Should I start? No. What you should do is place her. Anytime she is in the house and or decides to get barky or whatever she does, just put her in her place and just be a little tougher on her. Expect that she can do it, and she'll get over it once you really are just kind of, expecting her that, she can handle it. So I know Vivian quite well, and I know that, some of her behavior is sort of comes from entitlement. So I would say just put her in her place, enforce that she does that, and only, you should only have to correct her only 2 times. Don't correct her more than 2 times. All right. Make sure she knows what you want, and make sure you are consistent enough to where you don't have to continue to correct her over and over again. All right. So that's what I would do. You can get your dog used to any kind of thing that's obviously not going to harm them if we just hold them to it. Okay. Thank you for your question. All right, folks. Let's see some questions. Hey, will you let them outside, Liz? Tobias looks like he's pretty hot. Yeah, and then just keep an eye on him. All right, here we go. At the beginning of most walks, it is hard to get Toby to stay in heel position at first. He will always try and creep forward. I correct him right away at my hip, but he doesn't seem to understand that it's his boundary. I'm pretty sure he knows what heel means because when we practice at home, he does it perfectly. But when we are out for a walk, the great heel comes only after he is somewhat tired out. Is that normal, or should I be able to make him heel perfectly right from the door? Any suggestions in improving? Great question. I would not expect him to heel right from the get-go. A lot of dogs just gotta burn off that anxiety or the novelty of just starting the walk or just in the beginning. So I wouldn't worry about it. I would try to continue to work through it, and you'll find that it'll get easier quicker. It'll get easier to heal quicker, but I wouldn't put a lot of emphasis on it because that's pretty tough for a dog. So another thing you could do too to help it would be to leash the dog up, bring the dog out in the driveway, and then just sit the dog. That's it. Hi, Nancy. Just sit the dog until the dog is completely calm or
That's it.
Doesn't try and get up from that sit. You know what I mean? So that's what I would do. again, I wouldn't put a lot of emphasis on perfecting that because, you know, again, that'll be a tough one to overcome. But as long as you're getting there, then you'll find that the healing will become easier and easier as time passes. All right. Thank you for your question. All right. Here we go. Hi, Jeremy. I currently have a dog who I believe was abused by a male in his previous home. He was adopted last week and quickly returned because the gentleman didn't feel comfortable with him in the home because when he tried to be firm with him, he growled, bared his teeth, and postured up like he was ready to defend himself. He listens fairly well to me, but is very fearful of men. He will nip at simple things like reaching for his collar. How do I begin building his trust in men? Okay, so that's kind of an in-depth question, but I'll attempt to answer it because a lot of dogs do have trouble with men. So first of all, what you have to do with that dog is make sure the dog totally trusts you before you decide to introduce the dog to anything that could possibly provoke fear within the dog. So the dog really has to trust you. And what I mean by trust is not just the dog doesn't decide to bite you, growl at you, lip curl at you. That doesn't mean the dog trusts you. That means the dog feels safe enough to not bite you. But the difference is when I'm talking about trust is the dog actually starts to look to you for guidance as opposed to trying to handle situations on their own. And so in order to do that, you must give the dog strict rules. The more strict you can be, the easier he will be able to accept anything you want. The more strict you can be in the beginning, the easier he will be able to handle anything that you want the dog to handle. So it's almost like more control equals more freedom because eventually you won't need to worry about all that stuff, and then you can you put him outside.
It's raining.
That's okay. Put him outside for a second. You won't need to worry about him, not liking men because you've taken control of the situation long enough for the dog to open up his mind for change. So as far as the collar goes, what I would do is keep a leash on the dog, let the dog drag around the leash, maybe a 4 foot, maybe even a 6 foot, but I prefer 4 foot. And once the dog gets to know you, then you can reach for the collar and stuff like that. But in the beginning, just use the leash. Don't worry about him. In the beginning, that's how I move dogs in and out of crates. I'll take them for a walk. In the beginning, once they get to know me, then I can take that stuff off, but I use a leash. So definitely keep that in mind. The dog's just got to know you. All right? Thank you for your question. Okay. I think I'm having success with the boss now on high. I was afraid to go that high, so I see a difference in Petey. When outside, I use it so she doesn't bark and fence fight. If a dog walks by, should I just hold it? Hold it down if she doesn't go down onto her place. So this is what I would do. First and foremost, my approach would be to not give the dog something to do, more so than just correct the dog and tell the dog no. All right, I would try that. That would be my first approach. If that doesn't work, then you give the dog something to do, right? So I would either recall the dog or That's what I would do. I'd recall the dog and then put it on its place away from the fence. But my first attempt would just to get the dog to I would tell him no, press the button, not hold it, just press it like that and say no, and then allow the dog to deal with it in that situation. Because when you recall the dog and or put the dog in a down, that's sort of secondary when it comes to allowing the dog to, I think, fully benefit from seeing the action, being in the situation, and then being told what's right and what's wrong. So I would allow the dog to see the dog. If it does something wrong you want, correct the dog, and then every time it goes back into the barking or fence fighting, then you do it again and you just repeat it. All right. I think that's what my approach would be. My initial approach. Okay. All right. Kat says, how do you recommend dealing with a stubborn dog? For example, not listening to direction, such as come, sit, or down. Should I continuously repeat the command until the dog complies, or is there escalation protocol using a doggy don't or other corrective device or method? Great question. Very great question. So you could do two things. One way would be I like to wait the dog out. All right. And it depends again how you are enforcing, or how you're teaching the dog these things. Because the way that I teach dogs down and sit and come, they have to do it before we do anything else. So I'll stay there and stand there until the dog decides to go down, because I use leash pressure in a lot of my commands to get those non-negotiables. So I'll use the leash pressure, and the pressure will be on until the dog goes all the way down. And sometimes you will have to wait for 10 or 15 minutes. Stand on the leash, and just wait until the dog. But yes, secondarily, yes, you can use the doggy don't or the pet corrector to just kind of break focus. But be careful with those things, because certain dogs will really take it personally. So fearful dogs you could make them more fearful, and dominant dogs, like assholes, they could bite you or decide to rebel. So again, my first approach would be to just wait the dog out with leash pressure. Let the dog deal with being uncomfortable until the dog listens to you. Okay? So that's what I would do. If you want an example of that, go to my YouTube channel and watch my how to down or how to sit. And that's sort of my method to get through to it. So, if initially it'll take 10 minutes, then the next time it should take half that. So that's my approach. I've got a little dog right now who her name is Sadie. And the other thing is this too, you always have to gauge how much of the dog is within their own head. You can let him back in now. Listen. Sorry, I just waited till you sat back down. But you sometimes some dogs are in their own head so much, just being stubborn. But even still, you got to work through the stubbornness. That's the only way to get through to a reliable down, sit, come, and all that good stuff. So, thank you for your question. All right. Yes, I already got to your question, Rory. It was a good one. But basically, what I said was, just put her in her place. If you're inside, and if she's inside and she's acting up, just place her. Because if she experiences that stuff, come here, Mac. Come here, buddy. Lay down. Hey, buddy. Lay down. If she experiences that stuff while having something to do that she has to do, then the dog will get over it. All right. I think it's inside the house that she's acting up, right? Okay. He actually has been looking at me. Okay. So recently on walks, Toby has been doing really well, not reacting to triggers. He's actually been looking at me when sees a trigger is coming at him, bicycles. Then he would be indifferent to their passing from front or behind. My wife and I are blown away by that. Before, he would hardly ever make eye contact when on a walk, and definitely not when a trigger was coming at him. Then yesterday, one of those recumbent bicycles passed us from behind and rang a bell. That spooked him, and he stayed amped up for the rest of the walk. He just would not settle back into a nice heel position. He wanted to stay a little ahead. He was a little more excited than usual. Let's see, I just lost my place. Okay. He was a little more excited than usual to triggers dogs and people. I used voice, prong, doggy don't corrections, even tried tapping his side with a branch, which had previously worked well for breaking his focus. It is not like he exploded, but just would not completely settle back to normal. Any suggestions for calming him after something like that? Yeah, that's a good point. There's a lot of people who struggle with that. You know, once the dog has been super spooked, now they're on super high alert. What I like to do is really just sit the dog for a long time, maybe 2 minutes or so, and try and gather myself, and then do that sort of intermittently throughout the walk. Just sit and wait until he is sort of come down from his heightened state, right? You know, that could help. Or what you could do is make the dog walk behind you, which means, or you turn and face the dog so that you walk in front of the dog. I find that has helped a lot with many fearful dogs. So I will actually, so if I'm healing right here, I will actually turn and be walking. The dog will be facing me, right? I'll have the leash right here, and then we'll just be walking like that. I find that a lot of dogs, because of that frontal, maybe it's frontal pressure that they're experiencing, your frontal pressure, but I find that a lot of dogs are a lot less reactive in that sense. So try those things and let me know how it works for them. You still have your tools you can use, but yeah, walk backwards and face the dog walking backwards, and have a loose leash. Obviously, keep the dog try and keep the dog in your center line, and see what that gives you. That's worked for me in the past. All right. Okay. My fearful dog follows us around everywhere in the house. When we used to put him away behind the baby gate, he just whines nonstop because he can't stand being in the middle of the action. What are things we should work on with him in order to get control of those things? Plain and simple, you got to work the place command, or what are the go to your bed command. Give the dog a place where he has to go and has the option to get up. You can't just control him by a baby gate, because that will create that frustration. But put the dog in a place where he has to go and has to stay. All right. Practice after walks when he's nice and tired, but keep his leash on. So right after a walk, don't take his leash off. Keep his leash on and put him on his bed. Make sure he goes and lays down on his bed. Okay. Tell him to stay. Walk away. And if he gets up, you simply grab the leash, tell him no, and put him back. All right, so it's just going to be a stubborn battle between you two. But once he knows you're going to just put him back, then he'll stop trying to get up. That's going to create his independence. You want to start doing that with your dog anyway. You know, a lot of people think it's sort of nice to be able to have a dog that, you know, follows you around and is cute and stuff, but the dog needs to build independence from you. So just give that dog a job to do that it has to do. You may really have to start with a leash on. I highly recommend that. All right. Okay. Should I be concerned because Petey is always looking out the fence towards the right, then the left, just waiting for something to excite her? The other dog, her litter mate, sniffs around, sits, lays down, and so yeah, that's a very good point. I wouldn't even let her focus on that. You know, she can look relaxed. Look, she cannot look intense. You want to correct that. You don't have to correct that at that high level, but you can correct that at a lower level. You know, that's a very, very good point. Don't even let her intensely look at that, because that's going to be that precursor. So correct that. Very good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Okay. Sits down, relaxes. Does Petey have a problem because she is too good of a watchdog? Should I snap her out of it before it starts, or just let her? Yes. So I already kind of answered that, but yeah, definitely snap her out before it starts. So, what might be some reasons why my dog takes her food and eats it away from her bowl? She will take a bite and bring it about 5 feet away from the bowl to eat. That will last the entire time. It could have been a result of what happened in the litter. Some dogs just do that, I think, naturally or genetically. But if she's ever had to sort of protect her food or grab food and run away in a threat of other dogs taking it, then that may happen. I've seen that a couple times, but you're welcome. You're very welcome. I've seen it a couple times, but I don't know. Sometimes it happens in the litter, wherever she was born. So, thank you for your question. So Nancy brings up a great point that I want to talk about before we go on. And again, feel free to ask more than one question, guys. But anyway, if you're still, so this is what I had a couple of conversations with people that are still struggling on the walks and things like. So I had a lady call me and said, she's still reacting on the walks towards people and dogs. What are we doing? And I've worked with this dog, and I know that this dog has the ability to do what we want the dog to do. So I said this. Sometimes it's not just about correcting the walk. Sometimes you have to reevaluate every single thing you're doing with your dog. And one of the things that we found out talking together was she barks out the window like crazy. And so the point being, be tougher on her everywhere, on your dog everywhere, and then you won't have to be as tough when you need to be, right? So don't allow the dog to indulge in that behavior inside, and you won't get you'll get a much less reactive dog outside on the walks. All right. So the other thing is this: when you're correcting your dog has to know that you are correcting the dog not because of the triggers, not because there's other things that are setting the dog off. It's because a correction can become anytime and anywhere you decide to not listen. So that's one of the things one of the reasons why I don't get bit is because I correct the first sign of sassiness or first sign of not listening to me, and then I don't ever get to those extremes where the dog thinks it's even okay to bite. So it's very important that you get your point across when you have at those lower levels of disrespect or sassiness, to ever avoid the dealing with getting bit or even fights. So even if you correct the dog, even if say you have two dogs that are fighting, right? You may need to really correct the dog if one of them is humping one of them to avoid getting to the fight, to avoid them fighting. Because if they know you're there in the small things, you're not going to get to those big problems. So I say all that to say, if you're having trouble with your dog in one area, you want to reevaluate all areas. The dog should not be able to do. I wish you could see my dogs right now. The dogs should not be able to do what they want in the house. So less freedom in the house could be a great solution to getting your dog to act better on the walks. All right. So because it is my belief that if a dog does have to listen to you, not just half-ass listen to you, but if the dog has to listen to you more often, then you have a much greater chance for them to listen to you when it really matters. All right, which is when there's dogs, people, bikes, and any other trigger. So, those of you who just joined, feel free to ask questions. We're here for another 30 minutes. People who already asked questions, ask some more questions. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going on to my email questions. Okay, let's see. When Toby is out in the yard, a hot air balloon passes over. He gets really reactive. We are in Albuquerque, so this time of year they pass over pretty frequently. Sometimes the balloons are pretty low to the ground. If so, he will do some serious barking and lunging. With most things, he will calm down when we tell him to, but not the balloons. Any suggestions for helping him through a situation like that? Yeah, the bigger they are, the more loud they are, the more obnoxious they are. I think the more you're going to have to be there for him, and give it some time to stay consistent with your corrections, but you may have to. So one of the things that I do is if I'm doing a leash correction, I'll go ahead and use my wrist not once but twice, really quickly, simultaneously. Like, I'll kind of do this with my wrist, right? So I'll just be like boom, boom, like that, and that usually helps. Make sure first and foremost the prong collar is in the right position. It should be high as possible. It'll make sure that so that you don't have to use as much force. But yeah, I would just continue to do what you're doing. One of the other things you can do too, if you have an e-collar, or even if you just have a retractable leash, but I would prefer an e-collar, is what they call. Let's see, what do they call that? Shoot, I can't think of the term. But one of the things I do with dogs that are super reactive, and there doesn't seem to be sometimes a connection with the dog as far as all the tools, is I'll put them on a retractable leash, and I'll have an e-collar on the dog, and I'll kind of let the dog, be free. If it reacts, I'll recall the dog, right? So we'll be on a retractable leash. The dog is allowed then to go out in front of me. I don't care about that. And then we'll just walk by whatever. Obviously, I'm going to give the dog enough space. If a trigger's coming, then I'll keep the dog a little closer. But I also can work from a longer distance. But I'll let the dog go ahead and go out in front of me, and you may find that the lack of short leash and tension coming from you may be something that doesn't make the dog react. So, for example, I had two quick scenarios: one cane corso and one deaf blue heeler. The deaf blue heeler was a super car reactive dog. Man, just went nuts at cars. So what we did is put the dog on a retractable leash, and the dog, decided to get nervous and start, going like this away from you. but then doesn't feel any correction, right? And then all of a sudden the dog doesn't react because it didn't get that sort of barrier frustration coming from the owner. The other thing was the cane corso, which was dog reactive. We put the dog on a retractable leash, walked him through the neighborhood, and we didn't get one reaction out of the dog. All right, so we had an e-collar on the dog, and I wasn't using the e-collar only to call the dog to me when I wanted to call the dog to me. But other than that, it was the lack of tension that helped him through, or just didn't cause a reaction out of the dog. So you may want to try that. That I've had success with. I need to really put that on video so people can see that. But I'm trying to remember the term, but I can't remember it right now. Okay, my dog tried to nip at one of my guests only after they were giving me some high fives. What do I do in that instance where she really didn't like that was happening? When she was really great with the guest for almost 2 hours until that point. Yeah, dogs can get excited over that. What you can do is now this is what's all about dog training though. Now you know what exactly to do, or what exactly provokes that behavior from your dog. Now you have to just be proactive with correcting her. So anticipate it, work on it with whoever's bold enough, or not bold enough, but just work on it with people that she knows and maybe is comfortable with. And then if the dog gets at all excited, then you correct the dog. If the dog gets at all excited, starts even walking towards you in an excited state, give that dog something to do, or tell the dog no. Either say go to your bed, or say no. Really correct that dog for that, and that'll help it. Okay, so just now again, dog training is all about learning what your dog is reactive towards or anything like that, and then being proactive with it. But keeping that in your mind. Don't not keep it in your mind, because it'll happen again. So just keep that in your mind that the dog reacts now when people give each other high fives. And then be proactive with our thought process. Don't even let them get near people before a correction and some guidance. All right. Thank you for your question. All right. How long should we practice the place command after we've walked our fearful pup? I mean, how many minutes should we do this exercise at a time? Until she gets it. You can start off with 10 minutes. The dog should be able to just relax in place. What you want to do is have a dog that is completely okay and or compliant, or not trying to get up. That's when you can start the timer, right? So you should work on the place until the dog knows what you want and stops trying to get up. But don't move forward before you get there. Before the dog says, all right, I'm going to just lay here. I may even fall asleep. That's what you want. That's the goal. Thank you for your question. Can you stop male dogs from marking? They never do it inside, but as soon as they go outside, they lift their legs on everything. And when they go new places or new car comes, they do it right away. Yeah, that I don't think you can yell at them for it, but I don't think you can really stop them from it. It is a learned behavior, lifting the leg, but it's also such a just an instinctual behavior. It's what they do, and when they get more mature, they could possibly stop doing it as much. But young dogs seem to do it more because they want to really prove themselves or get their smell out there. But I just yell at my dogs when I know that they're getting ready to do it. But that still doesn't really won't stop them. I mean, they haven't slowed down marking. My dogs will all mark the same spot. It's kind of weird. Even my female. And she does lift her leg. So yeah. I'm sorry I couldn't be more help. All right. Okay, let's go to a question in email. Let's see. I have two foster dogs. No, I have a foster dog, a reactive German Shepherd, 2-year-old. Had him for 5 months. We're taking reactive dog training classes and working hard at redirecting his behavior. He mostly reactive to dogs, some people and some kids, but he recently started pulling and reacting to vehicles on walks. Any idea why he would just start reacting to vehicles now? Any tips to handle the vehicle reactivity? Yes, the vehicle reactivity is going to be the same thing how you handle the dog reactivity. It's nothing different. What the problem is, you're redirecting. That means you're being reactive to the dog's reaction. You want to be proactive with the dog's action. And so it's not about seeing if the dog's going to do it or not. See, that's the fundamental problem with a lot of reactive classes. They let the dog react, or they let the dog see if it's going to react. If it doesn't, it gets a treat. If it does, then they tell them no. But the problem is the dog needs guidance long before it reacts. The dog needs guidance the moment it goes like this. That's when the dog needs guidance. That's when you tell the dog no. That's when you correct the dog. Because once the dog's already reached a certain level of, adrenaline and or reaction, it's going to be much harder to reach the dog. So that's the problem with a lot of these classes. Let's see if he does it this time. So it's no surprise that the dog's now choosing to see cars as something the dog should react to, because there's just not enough guidance in the right direction coming from you guys. So what I would recommend is being proactive with the dog's thought process. When the dog starts to, you first of all learning the triggers, and then you see the trigger before the dog. Once the dog immediately looks at the dog or person or cat or dog or vehicle, then you have to give that dog a correction, some guidance, because the dog's just going to, his level of anxiety maybe is going to just continue to grow if there's no intervention. You want to keep it down this way, right? So it's going to go up like this. You correct, it brings down just a little bit. And then it goes up again, and you correct it, and it goes back down. You want to keep it right here, and or just very level. Dog's ears should be back and relaxed. Tail should be down and relaxed. That's the dog you want to walk. Not the dog with the ears up, not the dog with the tail up. A lot of German Shepherds do this breathing sound before they decide to react. That's your cue to go ahead and correct the dog. They do that kind of crap. So look for the small signs. Those ears are very telling on what the dog's mood is, especially amongst those triggers. So that's what I would do. Thank you for your question. Okay, folks, continue to ask some questions. We got about 15 minutes left. Then we're going to wrap it up. And we're going to wrap it up. All right, hold on. I got another. Whoa, where did that thing go? Okay. Let's see. Our two dogs. No, that's not it. That's not it. I already answered that one. Let's see. You ignored me. No, I didn't. All right. What is the best way to help my dog who is 6 with when I play with him? My daughter who is 2, She wants to play and gets in between us. What is the best way to help my dog who is 6 with when I play with my daughter? Oh, okay. When you're playing with your daughter, make sure that you can just play with your daughter and that's it. And then when you play with your dog, you should just play with your dog maybe outside away. But give your dog some time separate from your daughter. And when your dog does that, um, tell the dog no. Make sure the dog obviously takes you serious when you do that, because that's a serious situation. And if your dog's starting to do that, it could become jealous of your daughter, and it could potentially nip or bite your daughter. So I would definitely make it very clear to your dog that I can play with my daughter and you don't need to be involved. All right, just being on the safe side. You know your dog more than me or better than I, but my golden rule is I always play with or pet one dog at a time when I'm socializing dogs, because I know that there could be a potential that a dog gets jealous for attention and they decide to act out because of that. So I would again make it very obvious to your dog that this is not going to happen. Okay, just to keep your child safe. Oh, okay. Let's see. We have any more questions here? So when Toby voluntarily looks at me when a trigger is coming at us, does that mean he is starting to trust us more on the walk? We've noticed he started doing this periodically. We give him a lot of praise when he does this. Yeah, but don't give him too much praise. Just give him some praise. All right, that's the other thing. You want to make sure you're evaluating how much praise you give your dog and what's that getting you. Just give him a good boy. That's it. You don't need to pat him in all this elaborate praise, because in those environments you don't want to pet a nervous dog. You just want to sort of be that more tough than not, but give a little bit of sugar, right? Just good boy. You know what I mean? And so that you're not giving enough to where he starts to go back to maybe his nervous mindset or his pretentious mindset. So gauge how much praise you're giving. That's pretty much the biggest thing that I can tell everyone is also always sort of evaluate how much you're giving your dog versus how much in order for them to stay humble, pretty much. All right, so how much you're giving them, because if you're giving them too much and they're acting out, obviously then you have to stop giving them what they want, which is maybe your love, affection, and praise. So always evaluate that, because they can work for praise if it's not giving to them a lot, too much. If you're giving the dog too much praise, then the dog's free to act how it wants, because you're obviously okay with it to a certain degree because you're petting him or petting the dog. So I would gauge that. My dogs are very thankful to be pet by me, because I don't pet them all the time. And I'm a dog trainer, and I'm around dogs all the time, so it's a little bit different for me. But a good dog, in my opinion, is appreciative when they get that attention that they really want, or anything that they really want. So they're not, some dogs that get too much will kind of pull away from you too. So gauge that. I know that was a long answer for that question, but just sometimes a simple verbal good boy is enough, and then keep rolling. All right. Thank you for your question. All right, folks, we're down to 10 more minutes, and my questions are long-winded. So if you guys have questions, any final questions, feel free to ask. If you want me to talk about something, then you can just bring up a topic too. I think I've got maybe a couple more questions left in my email. So If I don't get any from you guys are the priority, obviously. But I got a couple more questions in my email. All right, let's see. So I have a lab who always wants to jump up to say hi to people coming through the door. Once he does so, will stay down on all fours. What is the best way to correct the jumping? All right. So first things first, the dog has to know that jumping is disrespectful and not something that they can do. Jumping in this dog's life has gotten him somewhere, gotten him something. Got a question on YouTube. I'm going to come back to that. Jumping. We'll come back to jumping. All right. Question on YouTube. My dog is afraid of strangers. Is it best for my dog to have me prevent strangers from paying attention to my dog? And is it right for me to put the dog behind me and keep talking to strangers? Yeah, so that's a great question. I would, if your dog is afraid of strangers, yes, I would not let strangers pet the dog for about a good, I don't know. I'm just trying to give you an 8. There's no real time you can put, but maybe 5 months. The dog needs to see that people can have the ability not to invade her space, because I think in your dog's past that's what has happened. So once dogs can actually have the option to go up to someone, or have the ability to not go up to someone, or have someone come up to them, then they can start to you'll start to see change in the perception of strangers coming from the dog. So keep strangers away from your dog. Just like you said, you can keep the dog on leash, talk to the stranger, let the stranger just ignore the dog, and if the dog wants to go up to the stranger, then the dog can go up to the stranger, gauge that. But there are plenty of aggressive dogs that come to my place, and I talk to the owners. I don't even look at the dog, and the dogs always come up to me, sniffing me, and the owners say, she doesn't usually do this, and I say, well, people don't usually do what I do. So it's just all about how the stranger is sort of interacting. So yeah, just let the strangers know that she's not, she doesn't like to be pet or touched. Just ignore her and let her see again that you can control those strangers so that she doesn't have to. Because that her fear reaction is her attempt to control the situation. And so what you have to do is do it for her until she's ready for strangers, or to approach strangers herself. Okay, my dogs, it took, and I really took my time, but my dogs, it took about a year or so. Okay, because it is behavior modification. All right, thank you for your question. Okay, so real quick, back to jumping, and then I'll wrap it up. Jumping. So again, if a dog jumps, they need to think it's disrespectful, and they definitely don't need to get what they want. They don't need to get your attention. They don't need to get a treat. They don't need to be pet. They don't need to be let outside. They don't need to be reinforced in any way. Anything they want, after they jump, they can't have it for another 10 minutes, or until they go calm down. But that's what I would do. Remember to make it that it's a disrespectful thing, so correct them for it. Because if dogs jump on other dogs, they're going to correct them for that. All right? So remember that you are reinforcing it if you give them attention while they're jumping, or if anyone does. But if your guest doesn't know that, then put the dog on leash until the dog calms down, and then you can let the dog off leash. Okay? You can also invest in a doggy don't or a pet convincer. Google those two things if you haven't heard of it. Doggy don't or pet convincer. Those will definitely help with the jumping and getting through to the dog that is disrespectful. All right. Okay. Not sure if this is a question that went through. Not sure if this question went through. So the fact that Toby is periodically looking at me when an oncoming trigger comes, does that mean he's trusting me more on walks, or should I praise him for that? And should I praise him for that? Yes, you should praise him for that. But I said you should praise him for that just subtly, not elaborately. Just say, good boy. You know, and then keep it moving. That's about it. Every time he does that, good boy. Okay. All right, folks. Any last questions? Get it in, because we're getting ready to sign off. This has been a great one. We will be here next Thursday, same time, answering some questions. So if you think of one after we get off, then just save it for me, email it to me, or you can even type it in, and I'll answer it online later on. But thank you guys for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and or a heart, whatever. Yeah. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see y'all next time. Okay, bye. Listen, now you can stop it.